For 3 decades now, Nintendo's Legend of Zelda series has constantly found interesting ways to reinvent itself into evocative and groundbreaking adventure games. The recipe is similar, but each game manages to still feel remarkably distinct. With such a track record of perfection, we couldn't help but wonder, what are the top 10 Zelda games of all time? Join us as IGN sets off on a quest through the vast worlds of Hyrule to answer this difficult question. Originally envisioned as a trilogy for the Game Boy Color, Oracle of Seasons and its counterparts, Oracle of Ages, found our hero exploring the lands of Holodrum and Labrynna, respectively. As a spiritual successor to Link's Awakening, each game focused on a different aspect of the Zelda experience. Seasons focused on combat, while Ages was more about puzzle solving. Traveling between eras and manipulating the weather leads to some genuinely clever puzzles, and the ability to equip rings to improve Link's stats introduced RPG elements that would be seen in later games. The real brilliance behind each of these games is the way they complement each other. You can play only one, but you only get half the story. Equal parts A Link to the Past and Wind Waker, the Minish Cap was the perfect blend of charm and old-school exploration. As Capcom's second original Zelda outing, Minish Cap was applauded for its whimsical tone and impressive sprite-based artwork. Its original spin on the oft-used dual worlds idea and original characters like Vati and Eslo helped alleviate some problems with the game's overall length, and its lighthearted tone helped establish this GBA adventure as a memorable one. Twilight Princess contains some of the most action-packed bosses and epic story sequences of the series, but it manages to also be engaging and heartfelt. Despite its lengthy intro, the adventure picks up the pace and eventually nudges you into an expansive landscape to save a cast of memorable friends from the 4 corners of Hyrule. This world is complemented by some rather unique dungeon configurations that hide over-the-top items like the ball and chain and the spinner, even if they were underused. And of course, Twilight Princess gave us a cunning companion and a grand-scale adventure worthy of the Zelda name. Zelda: A Link Between Worlds is a love letter to the Zeldas of the past, while still being a move toward the future. It stands out for being wonderfully nostalgic, yet not overly familiar. Its dungeons might reflect old blueprints like ice, lava, and desert, but its puzzles are inventive and surprising nonetheless. It takes a world full of old memories, the Hyrule of A Link to the Past, and makes it fresh. The original Legend of Zelda for the NES defined open-world, free-roaming fantasy action in the late 80s. It threw you into its dangerous, monster-infested world without so much as a sword. Most importantly, The Legend of Zelda allowed you to fail. Even if you had a sword, you could happen upon an enemy that could kill you almost instantly. Players in 1986 had to burn bushes, push blocks, consult maps, and share tips at lunch or on the playground to unlock its myriad secrets. The Legend of Zelda ultimately set the stage for a new type of game that valued freedom and discovery above all else. Interestingly, 30 years on, the Zelda series seems to be returning to this foundation with Breath of the Wild, where, once again, you don't start with a sword, or pants, for that matter. Link's Awakening took the core elements of A Link to the Past, threw in some really strange, smart additions, and made the entire thing portable. The hero of Time's journey across the mysterious Koholint Island was filled with great dungeons, nods to other Nintendo games, and smart new items like Rock's Feather, which gave you the ability to jump. And of course, the entire thing culminated in the waking of the Windfish and an incredibly emotional ending. Majora's Mask is a fascinating Zelda game. Given its brief turnaround after Ocarina of Time, Nintendo had to think outside the box in terms of design. It makes the most of its relatively small world by having time itself play a factor in every character, setting, and event. Even 15 years later, it still delivers a world rife with personality, tense resource management, and emotional storytelling. As Link fights day and night against the flow of time, the ominous moon glares down at him. It's one of the most iconic sights in the series' history and a constant reminder of the world's impending doom. Underneath Wind Waker's candy-coated, childlike veneer is a sprawling, emotional adventure filled with more heart than any Zelda game to date. This version of Link is so expressive and charming that it's hard not to love him right from the outset. It refined everything that made Ocarina an instant classic to near perfection. Nintendo overhauled the combat system, gave us a colorful cast of lovable characters, and let's not forget that incredible ending, which turns out to be one of the most badass team-ups of all time. All of this helped make Wind Waker an easy choice for the number 3 slot. Link's first trip into the third dimension may have cribbed a lot of ideas from A Link to the Past, but don't you dare call Zelda Ocarina of Time a remix. It's so much more than that. Nintendo's groundbreaking 3D sequel sets players in a sprawling landscape full of mysteries and carefully teaches players the rules from the start of the first dungeon. But just when you think you've got a handle on everything, Nintendo pulls back the veil and pushes our hero kicking and screaming into a ruined future. The fight to save Hyrule in Ocarina of Time is wonderfully to the point, with some of the best music this series has to offer. It's no wonder it has endured as one of the most stirring and emotional adventure games of all time. Since its release in the early 90s, A Link to the Past remains a masterclass in game design, one that lays the foundation for many games of the series, and is still the most replayable one to this day. A Link to the Past intro gets right to the point. You awaken on a dark and stormy night, but within minutes you rescue a princess and set off on a grand adventure across 2 worlds to save Hyrule from Ganon's minions. Played today, this legendary installment is more than a Super Nintendo nostalgia trip. Its excellent pacing, wonderfully crafted sprite graphics, and fantastic dungeons have kept us playing this classic over and over on repeat. And it is quintessentially the best that the lauded Zelda series has to offer. For all things Zelda, keep it here at IGN.